I'm Jo Moffatt. I'm founder and MD of specialist ad agency Woodreed. We're specialist in that we apply the techniques, the creativity and the insight-led approach of the advertising world to help businesses engage their people and create high-performing cultures inside their organisations. I'm also Partnerships and Strategy Director for Engage for Success and co-host our weekly radio show. Engage for Success is a not-for-profit social movement and the UK's leading authority on employee engagement. We work entirely through volunteers around the country to provide evidence, research and case studies to help UK PLC create a more engaged, productive and profitable workforce. And as you'll hear from our keynote speaker shortly, David MacLeod, engaging our workforces is now more important than ever. This is my third time hosting events in this fabulous newsroom format, so thank you to the team for having me back. Initially, I think we all thought we could just postpone live events and meetings for a few weeks, but no, here we are over a year since lockdown began, and although in the UK at least we might be seeing light at the end of the tunnel, it is still very dark in many places. Whether that's as a result of personal circumstances or loss, or whether, as is the case with one of our speakers later on today, the unbelievable challenges of dealing with the appalling impact of COVID in India. I hope, Guy, you won't mind me quoting you as saying you're looking forward to this week's summit as a bright spot in an otherwise dark calendar. And I'm sure it will be, looking at the great range of topics and speakers we have ahead of us. But before we begin, some brief thoughts from the recent Microsoft Work Trend Index annual report. It's titled, "The Next Great Disruption is Hybrid Work," and ask the question, are we ready? So what I want to highlight before we begin are the 7 key trends and challenges from the report. And just ask you to keep them in mind as you listen to our speakers over the next 3 days. As with the COVID experience itself, there are positives and negatives to be found in these, and I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions. So first of all, flexible work is here to stay. But while 73% of employees want flexible remote work options to stay, 67% also want more in-person work or collaboration. The second theme, and this is a real challenge, is that leaders are out of touch with employees and need a wake-up call. 61% of business leaders say they're personally thriving. Yet 37% of employees, especially women, especially those with caring responsibilities, Generation Z, those on the front line, and new starters particularly, say their companies are asking too much of them. 3, high productivity is masking an exhausted workforce. There's some staggering numbers in that report, but essentially digital overload is real and it's increasing, and boundaries are blurring between work and home life. The fourth one is that Generation Z is at risk and will need to be re-energised. 60% of 18 to 25-year-olds are either flat out struggling or merely getting by. They've got key issues around work-life balance, but also about bringing new ideas to the table, not being heard in meetings, not feeling engaged or excited about their work. And number 5 is that shrinking networks are endangering innovation. With lockdown, we retreated to our bubbles. Interactions with immediate teams or close networks increased, but those with outside networks or those in more distance reduced. The 6th theme is that authenticity will spur productivity and well-being. A tough year really did make work more human. I think we can all recognise that. But the challenge really is, can we hold on to it? And then finally, number 7, talent is everywhere in a hybrid work world. And of course, that opens up huge opportunities for businesses and individuals. But of course, if you can work anywhere, someone anywhere can do your job too. So are we ready? Are we ready for that hybrid world? If we're not, what can we learn from today's speakers and case studies? So to our keynote speaker, and someone I have had the privilege of working with for many years. 10 years ago, a breakfast summit took place at 10 Downing Street, the heart of our UK government. It was attended by the Prime Minister David Cameron and CEOs of many of the UK's leading PLCs, public sector, not-for-profit and employers' organisations. They met to recognise and importantly put their names to the importance of employee engagement as a key driver of organisational success as a result of the influential Engaging for Success report co-authored by David MacLeod and Nita Clark. And this marked the launch of the Engage for Success movement. 10 years on, and the movement's purpose, inspiring people and workplaces to thrive is arguably more important than ever. So I'm delighted to welcome Engage for Success co-founder David MacLeod to deliver today's keynote. David is a visiting professor of the Cass Business School, an honorary professor of Nottingham Business School and a fellow of the Institute of Marketing, the RSA, and a companion member of the CMI. An early career in marketing led to divisional CEO of a global business, and David's held non-executive director roles in 3 government departments and worked in the Cabinet Office for a year and a half. David was awarded an OBE for services to employee engagement and business in June 2013. So David, welcome and thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Joe, and it's tremendous to be here. I think it's at a really, really important time for our topic, and it's fantastic. We've got these 3 days to share ideas and to learn from each other, and to have a chance to stand back from our day-to-day and really sort out what's important in our context in order that we can make progress.
Absolutely.
In this short period, I thought it's a great opportunity to, as I say, to stand back a bit from the day-to-day, think a little bit about the forces that have caused change over time, the acceleration of that change that's happened because of lockdown and COVID, to think a little bit about what is enduring and going to continue through in our need to continue through in our approaches, and finally, what opportunities and what challenges have these experiences thrown up? So then we've left time for Q&A. We will leave time for the Q&A, and Jo will handle that brilliantly as she always does. So let's talk first a little bit. Let's remind ourselves about this huge context, the pressures that have been growing on organizations over time and really result in a massive need to adjust how we work with colleagues and our people. I mean, let's think about the changes in technology. With digital, there was a big report that said it used to cost £10 million to launch a new business. It now costs £40,000. With genetic medicine, with AI, with robotics, with social media, with transparency, all these certainties have been thrown in the air by these changes, all the certainties we're used to a point where, I love this expression, has your market been Ubered? What can you be certain about now because of all these changes? Very, very little. And on top of that, of course, our consumers, our citizens, we're citizens of the public sector, consumers of the private sector, we've become more demanding. We want what we want and the way we want it, whether it's the school we want to send our children to, our views on rubbish collection, through to the products we want and the shape we want, the size we want, the specification we want. We've got a lot more demanding, and we've got more demanding about the way we want them. Did you know that the Institute of Customer Service showed that one of the criteria that people look for used to be 19th in importance, which was the customer service rep nice to me? It was number 2 last time I looked. What was it that Michael O'Leary, head of Ryanair, said? I think he said, if I'd realised being nice to customers would have increased payloads, I'd been nicer years ago. So all these things are coming at us all, and we as employees understand that and see those things. And then, of course, these employees themselves, increasingly, if you want me to bring myself to work, you need to empower me. I need to feel some sense of control over what I'm doing. There is a trust deficit. 7 out of 10 are typically neutral or disengaged. That is the start point we work with, which we have to address. And people want inclusivity, whether it's ethnicity, sexuality, whether it's the fact I'm creative or I'm detailed. We need to create inclusive cultures. And it's why, for instance, Glassdoor started to introduce a way of demonstrating and feeding back whether our organizations are in fact those things. So all these pressures has led to employee activism, employee views, employee feels, so that I don't want to be stressed. Why should I be stressed? And that can tip over into mental health challenges. I want to have an organization with a clear set of values. Again, recent research being very clear, people in organizations want to know what we stand for and want those articulated and lived, and I want to be listened to. And there is a growing sense of some of these things. I mean, the word culture is now used in the portals of the high and mighty, is it not? And if things go wrong, 9 times out of 10, the report that goes into it talks about the fact that culture broke. Culture is not effective and broke down. And of course, we'd like to feel we had some part in this, which is employee engagement used to be something talked about by the HR department and occasionally in broader places, and now it's a boardroom topic, which is exciting. So some progress, and of course, then we've had this acceleration of change, the world's biggest economic experiment, this world's biggest accelerated change we've been living through. And what's that done? Well, it's reminded us that we are social animals. You know, humanity is really important if I'm going to be effective. I am not a human resource. I am a human being. And if you treat me that way, I will offer a more of my capability and my potential. And that's why employees who rate their leaders as having managed well through this COVID lockdown results in 4 times the level of employee engagement and 6 times the levels of well-being, according to a recent McKinsey's report. And the good managers have got better. They've become more visible, more out there, more demonstrating. And I'm afraid the poor managers have got worse as they've hid behind their bunkers and tried to monitor how many times we tap our keys on our computers at home and so on. We've learned that individuality is absolutely central, where all individuals' reactions to this, reactions to lockdown or reaction to COVID have been very different, and we have to recognize that. And in that sense, it garners support for a realization, a growing understanding that people are our only assets. So how do we do, what do we do with this? Well, 10 years ago, the report that Nisha and I were lucky enough to pen, but actually was a result of a massive bit of work, we identified 4 things, 4 enablers that were present in organizations that do it well. And over the last 10 years, these have been reinforced. They're fully explained on the website. A lot of organizations are using them. But let's just remind ourselves, is there a story about the organization, where we've been and where we're trying to go? A guide, something that inspires me? My boss, does my boss treat me as an individual? Do they treat me as a human being? Are they coaching me continuously? It's also, and then there's employee voice. Do I feel respected and listened to? Is the psychological safety through which and from which I offer my ideas, my creativity, my thoughts for innovation? It's also the cheapest smoke alarm you'll ever have, because things go wrong in organizations, certainly did in the ones I was managing. Do catch them when they're this going wrong or when they're enormous, like we've been gaming the mission tests in North America for many years. And finally, there's a kind of, is there a sense that the values on the wall align with the behaviors that I observe? You know, if you do, you get trust. And as somebody said, trust arrives on foot and leaves on horseback. So creating a trusting environment where working effectively is so incredibly important. So let me finish with a few opportunities and a few challenges. The 3 challenges that strike me: we've got to get this topic from the choir to the congregation. There's lots of people who get the topic, but are we still too far and too contained within HR and a few people who get it? We've got to get it right out there to everybody, to all the functions. Big challenge. We've got to understand there's a lot of pseudo engagement around. Kind of, someone rather crudely said, lipstick on the pig. You know, we've got to move from transactional engagement to transformational engagement, where we really do fundamentally believe that this topic is about how we do what we do, not another thing on the action list. And the challenge of not reverting to command and control as unemployment rises and things get tough economically. This is the time to really pile on the pressure for engaged employees. But of course, the good thing is that we know we need agile people. We know we need to be productive. We're all change managers now. We need to be empowered. And the unfreezing of attitudes in organizations are starting to happen. You know, we're moving from great big dead hand performance management systems, great annual round, to individual development reviews. We're moving from benefits packages focused purely on the financial things to benefits packages focused much more on lifestyle and personal support. Again, that the recent feedback from Glassdoor and others is reinforcing. And of course, we've got massive opportunities through digital, through innovation. Some of HR was saying just the other day that more change in the last 6 months than the previous 6 years because we're able to do new things. My own personal tiny example was when we developed Dulux Natural Whites, it came out of a burning platform. It came out of things not doing well. We were enabled to think differently. So together, we can tackle these changes. We can seize these opportunities. As Abraham Lincoln said, he said, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And through this conference, there will be lots of really inspiring examples that we can hang on to, decide what's relevant for us, so that more individuals are engaged with a better sense of well-being, more organizations succeed, and if more organizations succeed, then our country succeeds. So I hope that in a way, sets a bit of a context for the important 3 days that follow. So, Jo.
David, thank you. That was lovely, and definitely a cracking start to 3 days of what I'm sure are going to be great speakers and case studies. And I love that Abraham Lincoln quote, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And you outlined some of the challenges that lie ahead. But your vision for the next 10 years, I mean, we're at the moment within the Engage for Success movement, we're celebrating 10 years since the launch. But it's very much an opportunity too, isn't it, for us to look forward and say, what do we imagine our workplaces are going to look like in 10 years' time after this hiatus of 2020/early 2021 and COVID and all the impacts that's had and the rapid ramping up of change that's resulted. What's your vision for 10 years down the track?
Well, great question, Jo. And I think it was Will Hutton who said we think of organisations as a network of transactions. They're also a social network, and I hope that over the next 10 years, we continue, of course, putting effort into what our strategy should be, what territories we should be in, what product sectors we should be in, what our various ratios should be. We need to get those things right. But what my dream for the next 10 years, at the same level at least, is an understanding of the importance of the human being at the center of this endeavor. And if we start to prioritize their well-being, their levels of engagement, their agility, their ownership, so that as we think about our future, as we think about a challenge that faces us, instead of thinking our employees are a product to manage, problem to be managed, we think of our employees as the solution to the competitive challenge, as a solution to the need to, be it reduce costs or innovate, that the whole sense of people moves front and center stage, the realization over 10 years that people are our only really enduring asset. And therefore, our approach, our thinking, the way we address this topic moves not from an additional thought, but becomes central to how we think about creating success in public sector organizations, not-for-profit, private, and our economic analysis starts to take this more seriously. Our government policies start to take this front and center. And then I think we stand a chance of enabling people to have productive, affirming jobs that are successful, creating the wealth we need for the public services that we all want and deserve.
Lovely, thank you. So that's an inspiring vision and something that I think we would all want to get behind. But what would you think is going to get in the way of that? What would you see as being the main barriers that are going to stop that vision becoming a reality, David?
Well, the people in leadership positions have typically come up through a track which has been born of managing staff and projects and making it happen. There's been a huge kind of push towards the so-called professionalization of management, which was brought in its wake this sense that if you can't measure it, if it isn't numeric, it doesn't exist. And that kind of, I think Mark Carney, the professor, the recent head of the Bank of England, called it the physics of things, and they are important. But the barrier is to think that they're the only important thing. They are front and center stage, and get that right and everything else flows from it. And funnily enough, it doesn't. You can put all the right factors of production in place. You can get all the right, sort out all the porters' forces, sort out your activity-based costing, you do all those things. But if you, in the end, don't truly engage your people, because of the history you've come up, because of the pressures around you, because of what's expected of you, if you don't make space for this, if it doesn't become front and center, then that will get in the way of us seizing this opportunity. But the exciting thing is, more and more organizations have started to take this more seriously. The best organizations have accelerated their approach in this space to be more productive, to be bigger thinking, to embrace the human being at the center of our workplaces. So it can absolutely be done. And the more we can concentrate on these, learning from these case studies and these fantastic exemplars, the more then the barriers start to come down, and we start to make progress as organisations and as a country.
Lovely, thank you. And just one final very quick question, if I may. You said the best have been getting better during the recent crisis, but the worst have kind of got worse. I'm paraphrasing it a bit. Why do you think there are still organisations or individuals actually who allow toxic cultures to develop and make workplaces really dreadful places for people to be?
I don't subscribe to people trying to make things more difficult. I think what's happened is that it's an outcome of command and control, which was an outcome of production line thinking, where you cut a job up into lots of little bits and you tell people what they need to do, and it creates efficiency. And that kind of top-down command and control is there, and it means that you don't address the important things, and you address people as kind of human resources, factors of production, and that has been a big barrier to getting to where we all know we need to get to.
So it's a legacy and one that we can work hard to overcome. Great stuff. Lovely. David, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for delivering a fabulous keynote. It's been great having you with us, and hopefully you'll carry on and observe from the sidelines for the rest of the summit. So thank you for that.
Good luck to everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.